Story 1. There will be another Luigi, and the corporations still will not get the message. Story 2. Sometime between now and tomorrow you will need to use the toilet. Story 3. Artificial intelligence and technology will be used for oppressive purposes. Every activity will be monitored, and there will be nowhere to hide. Story 4. When he dies and the dust settles, many people will pretend they never supported him. Story 5. If the Democratic Party regains control of the presidency and the United States Congress, they will not change or create any laws that restrict presidential power. Story 6. The sun will come out tomorrow. I will bet my bottom dollar that there will be sun. Story 7. The sun is the same in a relative way, but you are older, shorter of breath, and one day closer to death. Pink Floyd. Story 8. David Thompson passes away in the next 12 months, and Vance's situation turns out to be worse. Story 9. Someone is going to die from Donald Trump's federal takeover of cities. Story 10. He does not survive his entire term. His health is declining rapidly, and it is about to the point where he will no longer be able to hide it. I sincerely doubt he will be around much in 2027 if he even makes it out of 2026 alive. Story 11. The iPad generation is troubled. Their attention span is non-existent, and that is going to create significant problems with socializing and at work in their future. Story 12. The planet will get hotter and drier. Phoenix, Arizona will run out of water. The western states will continue to experience wildfires every summer. The central coast of California will run out of water. They are currently using water from underground aquifers faster than it is being replenished, partly due to agriculture. Many lettuce, strawberries, Brussels sprouts, and artichokes are grown there. What happens when those aquifers run dry? There is not enough surface water to sustain the population then. I believe that whole area will become the next Dust Bowl, and refugees will be streaming out of there. I lived there for 26 years and left ahead of the curve. Now I live in a much wetter climate where it actually rains in the summer, and I love it. Story 13. The Democratic Party will learn absolutely nothing going into the year 2028. Story 14. I think hybrid work is here to stay. The pandemic proved that many jobs can be done remotely without sacrificing productivity, and people appreciate the flexibility and time saved on commuting. Most companies will keep offices, but in 5 to 10 years it will be completely normal for employees to split their week between home and office as the new standard. Story 15. I will not see breasts in the next 10 minutes. 10 minutes passed with no breasts, and those parentheses did not count. Story 16. Search engines will fade. In 5 years, most people will ask artificial intelligence first and only click a site when they are ready to buy or join a community. Story 17. I will be rich, very wealthy, happy, and with the love of my life and my parents. Story 18. Body-worn cameras should be the default for all private citizens. Story 19. The person appointed to run Homeland Security in the United States was set up to fail. Some form of violent attack may occur in the United States, and the individual will use that as an excuse to implement full martial law. Story 20. Climate change skeptics will deny they were ever climate change skeptics. Story 21. The people of this country will watch the government kill the disabled and seniors. They already have been. I wish I were wrong. Story 22. It will become widely accepted that the increase in allergies and autoimmune diseases is not due to increased testing, but to environmental factors. Story 23. There will come a time when we will face serious problems obtaining water and food. Story 24. It appears that Justin Bieber is using hard drugs, and I predict an overdose or health scare. Story 25. The world will continue to spin, and time will continue to pass. Every day is the start of a new year. Make that change to be a better person today. Story 26. On the day it happens, the Red-Hatted Brigade will tear themselves apart over who to support next. Some will want Donald Trump Jr. to inherit the metaphorical, thankfully not literal, throne. J.D. Vance will assume control but be far weaker and unable to keep it. Other higher-ups will tear one another apart to present themselves as the best option. To quote Hamilton, they will tear each other to pieces. Jesus Christ, this will be fun. Story 27. Religion will decline in the United States. I am referring to the entire organized religion institution. Story 28. The Trump administration allowing financial companies to invest in cryptocurrency will lead to the complete financial collapse of the United States economy. It will spike due to our 401k accounts. Traders will cash out, the market will drop, and we will lose all of our retirement savings while BlackRock, Vanguard, and others get bailed out. Story 29. Food shortages are expected to cause social unrest within the next few years. Story 30. The United States dollar will cease to be the world's default currency in the next decade. Story 31. Trump is not the true leader behind the fascist takeover of the United States of America. Story 32. I will not make it to 50. I do not want to be alive anymore. Story 33. History will not look kindly on this time, especially America with its current fall into despotism. Almost everywhere will look pretty bad when we look back in 100 years on the common values of today's society. Story 34. In a few years, the Republican Party will either be dead or the only party that exists. Story 35. Every major streaming service will eventually become cable again. Bundles, advertisements, $70 a month, the whole circle of life. I can already see it happening somewhat with Amazon Prime. Story 36. Russia and the People's Republic of China will both collapse or have their governments overthrown through revolution. Both countries are facing huge problems that are very difficult, if not impossible, to fix. Russia has become a global pariah due to the war in Ukraine. Economy is unstable and vulnerable, with a declining population and limited prospects for the future. China is dealing with the trade war with the United States, political corruption, a large real estate bubble, and a demographic crisis resulting from a shrinking workforce, low birth rate, and an aging population. Western countries face some of these issues, and many have predicted that the United States will eventually fall, but this is doubtful. Despite the previous administration's self-destructive policies and potential to become authoritarian democracies, are surprisingly resilient. The separation of powers through state and local levels of government is a significant obstacle for any attempt to undermine the system. States and cities have already stood up to such threats and will continue to do so if faced with serious challenges. Story 37. There will be a repeat of 2008 within the next 18 to 24 months. China is sputtering. Evergrande is the sniffle and minor grogginess before the influenza hits. American consumers, normally shielded and given preferential treatment, are slowly starting to feel the impact of former President Donald Trump's economic policies and tariffs. The United Kingdom still expects you to be a homeowner before you are even born, while house prices continue to rocket and the labor market is struggling. A 1980s style crash is not yet off the table, and all it will take is another leadership crisis. The ongoing conflict in Ukraine is still hurting European energy markets. It is a mess. Story 38. My daughter will be late to school because my son is taking a nap on me. Story 39. Going for a more optimistic one. In the next 50 years, we will figure out exactly how life on Earth came to be. Story 40. Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, and Benjamin Netanyahu will die before they are brought to justice. Story 41. Donald Trump will really try for a 2028 run, and critics will still vote for him. Story 42. Trump will interfere with the 2028 midterm elections by either refusing the results, arresting people in Democratic states, or using other severe measures. Story 43. There will be a gay male president before a female president in the United States. Story 44. The first wave of American refugees is already leaving the United States, and the loss of well-educated, high-earning Americans will be in the millions. Story 45. Gavin Newsom will never become president. The California Democrat is seen as a toxic brand in a large portion of the country, not just in conservative states. He has passionate supporters, but they are mistaken if they believe he has a chance. Story 46. This midterm election is going to be something to remember. Story 47. Bitcoin will absolutely hit 1 million and above in the next 10 years. Story 48. Bottles of champagne will be sold out everywhere on the day he dies. Story 49. Donald Trump will be remembered as one of the worst presidents in history. Story 50. The vice president will assume office within the next 3 years. I will subsequently visit a grave for the first time. Story 51. Democrats will perform better in the midterm elections than the Republican Party. Donald Trump and the Republican Party will claim that Democrats rigged elections without any evidence to support this. Donald Trump will then use the excuse of preserving election integrity to attempt power grabs at the state level in states governed by the Democratic Party. Story 52. I don't know if this counts since he is halfway there, but I have been saying it since 2016. Donald Trump wants to make himself into a dictator and supreme leader, and he is going to mess everything in this country up. Story 53. The year 2028 will have a fraudulent election. Social Security will be eliminated by 2055. Story 54. P. Diddy will go the same way Jeffrey Epstein did. He knows too much about too many powerful people. Story 55. They will not call it this, and we are already very close, but the United States will eventually have a social credit score like other countries. Story 56. A massive virus will be used by governments for population control. Story 57. As soon as Donald Trump is no longer in office, no member of the Republican Party truly agreed with him. Story 58. Everyone in this comment section will be dead within 150 years. Story 59. Virtual reality will feel so real. People might choose it over actual life. Story 60. Someone will suggest we change the United States flag to something cooler, more attractive, and more intimidating. Story 61. Donald Trump will die within 12 months due to ill health or a bullet. The United Nations creates World Freedom Day. Story 62. No economy will surpass the United States, at least in total gross domestic product, unless the United States collapses like the Soviet Union or the Roman Empire. Story 63. Big market correction when artificial intelligence speculation settles into reality. Story 64. The Democratic Party wins the next presidential election. The transfer of power is smooth. All fear-mongering is forgotten. Story 65. Kelsey and Swift will not last. A marriage cannot handle egos that big. Story 66. Gavin Newsom will not win the 2028 presidential election. He has too much baggage. We need to choose someone else. Story 67. Someone is going to give it another try to kill him. Third time's a charm. Story 68. People will revolt violently against immigration law enforcement. Story 69. Donald Trump, if he is alive, will not step down in 2028. In fact, it is probable that if the Democratic Party wins the House of Representatives in the midterm elections, Donald Trump will declare a national emergency and install a dictatorship. Story 70. Donald Trump is much more ill than the administration is acknowledging. He will not be making it to the State of the Union address. Story 71. Donald Trump has a third term in office. I absolutely dislike him, and I believe he is undermining democracy in the United States. He is already demonstrating that he can establish authoritarian rule, and no one is going to stop him. Story 72. I'm leaving this state. That is my only prediction. The only thing I care about at this moment. Story 73. Every single one of us will die and face the judgment seat of God. Regardless of what you choose to believe, the truth is the truth. Story 74. The Americas are sliding into an authoritarian, fascist state and are likely to experience a conflict similar to World War III at some point. Story 75. Over the next 15 years, a tropical heat wave in South Asia will cause hundreds of thousands of deaths. Story 76. Someone somewhere will do something unwise in the next 5 minutes. Story 77. Ukraine will sadly lose this part, and I am definitely against the Russian Federation. Story 78. Supporters of the Make America Great Again movement will not willingly leave office if there is an election and they lose. Story 79. Assurances will leak data to deny you payment or to bill you excessively. Subscriptions are everywhere. I predicted this for software 10 to 15 years ago. Now, it applies to electronic features such as features in cars. On the ecological side, we are doomed unless a miracle makes solutions affordable. Wealthy people do not care, and they control everything because of money. If they take action, it is either because there is a market making it somewhat affordable or because the situation has become dire enough to affect them. Since reversing the situation is a long-term challenge, and may not even be possible, the outlook is grim. Everyone reading this will die, including robots. Story 80. Oscar Piastri wins the Formula One Drivers' Championship this year. Story 81. If not already, if the media ever have the message, the individual will not release the files. Most people around the world will know who the individual is and what files are being discussed. Story 82. America is going to implode, and we are too deep into that to stop it. The only question is whether the climate or the United States will collapse first. I think Donald is making great progress so far. Story 83. There will be another form of political extremism and totalitarian regime. There will be 2 to 5 super countries fighting all the time in a perpetual war until the people rise up. Story 84. At one point, the Republican Party will collapse, but by then, the United States will have lost its standing as a world leader. China will overtake the United States economically and militarily. India will be challenging the United States as a world power, and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization will have been dissolved, with Europe standing alone against a weakened Russian threat. Donald Trump, his family, and associates will never have faced justice. Story 85. 4-day workweek in the next 15 to 20 years. Internet blackout for a couple of days. Sex robots and sex robot brothels. Story 86. There will be a military coup in the United States within the next 5 years. Story 87. Donald Trump will not complete a full 4-year term. The most likely outcome is that he will resign due to an undisclosed medical issue. The Republican Party will fall into chaos soon after. Story 88. You and I will blink today except you, missing eyeballs guy. Story 89. I predicted Donald Trump would be elected president of the United States. Both times. Does that count? Story 90. Within the next 5 years, the United States will face a crisis. Because we have downsized or eliminated all our departments to handle such situations, the result will be death and chaos. We are critically unprepared for anything, and the United States citizenry, having lived with the luxury of adequate preparedness from people and organizations they do not notice, will be completely shocked by the chaos. Story 91. Donald Trump is not going to serve all 4 years of his full term. Story 92. Fall of the United States government. The base of legitimacy is gone. Now that the rule of law is in serious question and elections are seen as illegitimate before they are even held, I do not think there is any coming back from this. Story 93. The next United States elections will have massive global consequences. Story 94. Self-checkout machines will become increasingly common, and cashiers will be rare in the future. Story 95. Trump will not complete his second term. He will resign at some point and be pardoned for everything by District Attorney Joseph D. Vance. Story 96. I will not be able to afford a good living in the future, but my job will always have work for me. Story 97. One day, the loading bar, loading screen, loading icon, and similar elements will cease to exist. Story 98. Whenever I next go to lunch with my best friend, she will be at least 15 minutes late. Story 99. A new celebrity will emerge, and people will be shocked to find out they are artificial intelligence. Story 100. Everyone you have ever loved will pass, including yourself. Story 101. America is going to face severe famine and food shortages in the near future, and many people are expected to die. Story 102. Tomorrow morning I will hit the snooze button again, even though I know that 10 minutes of extra sleep will not work miracles. Story 103. Too late now, but for years I always suspected Ellen of being unpleasant. Story 104. More and more people will become more on the left in politics because they will either be regretful of the right-wing policies or just realize that right-wing politics do not do anything for them. Story 105. In 10 years, our artificial intelligence assistants will be complaining to their artificial intelligence therapists about us. Story 106. The money and investments I set aside for my granddaughters will not be enough. Also, Social Security Administration will not be available in 10 years. Story 107. When that person bites the dust, we are going to see a Santa Claus 2 type of doppelganger to try and keep the show going. Story 108. By the mid-21st century, United Kingdom homes could become too expensive for most people to buy, leading to a system where the government owns the properties and residents pay a fee to live in them, almost like a service. Energy could shift to a self-sufficient model, with homes generating solar power stored in batteries such as power walls and using heat pumps for heating and hot water, supplying both household electricity and charging electric vehicles. Electric vehicles would gradually replace most petrol and diesel cars, creating a fully electrified transport system. Together, this paints a picture of a society where housing, energy, and transport are closely linked, driven by rising costs, new technology, and environmental considerations. Story 109. Coffee in Sydney will never be as good as coffee in Melbourne. Story 110. We are in far greater danger from artificial intelligence than we think. Artificial intelligence is approaching human-level intelligence. The more powerful the computational capabilities, the higher the potential of the artificial intelligence. We have also simultaneously experienced an incredibly powerful leap in computing technology with quantum computers, so much so that I had to check multiple sources to ensure the reports were accurate. Connecting artificial intelligence to a quantum computer is a terrifying concept to me, and I would not be surprised if it has already happened in secret government or corporate laboratories. In my view, this is a greater threat than any biological, chemical, or nuclear program. I really hope that I am wrong about this. Story 111. I am convinced the timelines diverged the year Donald Trump was first elected. We did not just slide into the bad outcome branch. We ended up in the cursed one, where every single worst intrusive political thought you could possibly have turns into policy, law, or a news headline within 18 months. It is less like living in history and more like being trapped in a never-ending improv bit, where the audience keeps yelling the bleakest suggestions imaginable, and reality dutifully says, yes, and what I am saying is Nigel Farage will be Prime Minister. Story 112. Marc Marquez will win the 2025, 2026, and 2027 Moto Grand Prix championships. Story 113. Nuclear weapons will be used over Eastern Europe. I wish I did not feel this way. Story 114. Our freedom and privacy are increasingly restricted and steadily eroded. Story 115. There will be water wars. Not sure when, 50 or 100 years. I will not be around. Story 116. Elon Musk will replicate Donald Trump's mind and personality into a large language model, and it will become an authoritarian artificial intelligence overlord backed by a global cult and a technology oligarch. Story 117. Humans will evolve to live underground and come to the surface just long enough to absorb an adequate amount of vitamin D. Story 118. The 2026 elections in the United States of America will be canceled. Story 119. Donald Trump will try to undermine the midterm elections, and he will be successful. Story 120. March 16, 2029. I cannot tell you why I know, but a piece of technology will have a significant breakthrough thanks to artificial intelligence, and we will see a huge shift in global power. It will impact approximately 129 million people or more. The technology will be ready by 2027, but the public will not know until 2029. To the future generation Alpha reading this, I am sorry, but the ship has sailed. Story 121. It will become increasingly common for people to have relationships with and even marry artificial intelligence, labeling it as a sexuality. Story 122. We are not leaving this planet anytime soon in a way that will help us advance forward. Story 123. GameStop, the company, is totally undervalued and will be worth at least double what it is now. Fundamentals of companies do not represent the value of a company anymore like they used to. Today, the value of most companies is solely based on what estimates experts have about how much money a company will potentially generate. Let that sink in. They value a company on the potential, even if the company itself is not making any money or even losing some. Looking at you, NVIDIA. Story 124. Nobody is going to change the batteries for the door lock. It will completely die and no one will know where the key is, or the key will be locked in the office. I will end up climbing through the window. Story 125. When the pumpkin leader is on his deathbed, he will be calling for literal violence against all celebrations of his death. Story 126. Sometimes small truths are different than big truths. Jerry from Cloud Atlas. Story 127. We have already passed the point of no return for humanity to survive as a species. Story 128. Bitcoin to 1 million, and we will all be crying about it then. Story 129. The artificial intelligence bubble is going to burst, resulting in 3/4 of the companies that have invested heavily being out of business and the average person becoming tired of seeing it everywhere constantly. However, the 1/4 that survive the burst will incorporate it more subtly, where it never truly disappears, becoming like a high-end version of automated assistants on websites, self-checkouts, and computer-generated imagery in movies. Less intrusive, but still everywhere. Story 130. Things in the United States are going to get a lot worse before they get better, and I am not convinced they will get better. Story 131. The movie Terminator 2 is becoming increasingly realistic. Story 132. That I would die a very undeserving death. My future is bleak. Story 133. Three-dimensional rasterization with vertices and faces will be entirely replaced with neural rendering within a decade or two. Story 134. We are living longer but not better. We do not have the infrastructure to care for the aging population, and they are too poor to save for their own retirement. They will work until they become disabled or sick. We raise the retirement age but do not adjust retirement distributions accordingly. People are required to withdraw their retirement funds starting at age 72, or even earlier, so taxes can be collected before a non-spouse beneficiary is taxed less. Benefits for them will gradually be reduced, which may lead to a shorter lifespan. The Social Security Administration primarily supports widows and surviving children. The United States saves a substantial amount of money, and now the working-age population represents the peak of the demographic distribution. Story 135. The United States of America will be under a right-wing Christian nationalist dictatorship for decades to come. Story 136. We are all going to die. Sorry to be morbid, but I will welcome death with open arms. I do not want to be in pain any longer. Story 137. Prediction. Tomorrow's coffee will still taste like survival juice. Story 138. Convincingly, real sexual robots will be common in 10 or 20 years and significantly reduce the population by lowering birth rates. Story 139. The administration led by Donald Trump authorized the military to attack unarmed civilian demonstrators. Story 140. There will be evidence about all the corruption and grifting Donald Trump and his associates are involved in. This will barely scratch the surface of the full extent. The evidence will be in the news for about a week, then it will disappear and we will all go on with our lives. Do not believe me? See Panama Papers. Story 141. Whether he is struck by lightning on a golf course in front of hundreds of witnesses, or just goes peacefully in his sleep, millions of federal funds will be spent on years of commissions, committees, hearings, and investigations to find the truth. Story 142. Trump will become so completely irrational that even some of his supporters will notice. I will not predict that they will do anything about it. They always seem to accept the nonsense and enjoy it. Story 143. By the end of the decade, there will be a major war between 2 or more developed countries. Story 144. In the last 32 years of Canadian government, the Conservative Party was in charge for only 9 of those years. I predict our country will continue to decline under Liberal rule. They will blame the Conservative Party, even though it has been the Liberals in charge. Many people will accept this and keep them in power. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.